In the world of professional wrestling, there's one role more crucial than any championship belt, being the face of the company. Each one had Vince McMahon's billion-dollar machine betting on their star power. But what happens when the company that made you no longer needs you? The untold story of how these superstars went from carrying the company to carrying burdens they never saw coming will change how you see the business forever. First up, Scott Hall. Scott Hall was one of wrestling's most charismatic performers, revolutionizing the business when he formed the NWO. He went from being a struggling mid-carder to becoming the bad guy Razor Ramon, a cultural icon who carried the Intercontinental Championship with style and swagger. In 2022, at 63 years old, he passed away after being taken off life support. Scott Hall was no doubt one of the greatest, but one question remains unanswered. Why WWE never gave him a world title run? In 1958, Scott Oliver Hall was born in St. Mary's County, Maryland, beginning a nomadic childhood that few could imagine. As the son of a military man constantly receiving new orders, young Scott found himself uprooted and replanted in unfamiliar soil nearly every year until he was 15. Though wrestling captivated his imagination from an early age, the path to the squared circle wasn't immediately clear. After graduation, Scott drifted through life like a ship without anchor, taking whatever work would pay the bills. His imposing frame and natural intimidation factor made him perfect for security work, and he found steady employment guarding the doors of various bars and nightclubs, keeping watch over the rowdy nightlife scene. But fate has a way of violently redirecting our paths when we least expect it. In 1983, while working security at an Orlando nightclub, Hall's life changed forever during one fateful shift. What began as routine crowd control escalated into a life-or-death struggle that ended with Hall firing his weapon in self-defense. The patron died from his wounds. Though initially charged with second-degree murder, the case was eventually dismissed when investigators confirmed Hall had acted to protect himself. But legal exoneration couldn't erase the psychological damage. This traumatic incident would cast a long shadow across Hall's future. His closest confidant, Kevin Nash, would later point to this moment as the catalyst for the demons that would eventually hunt Hall throughout his career, the addiction issues that nearly consumed him. How do you move forward when you've taken a life, even justifiably? It's a question Hall would spend decades trying to answer. Seeking escape and reinvention, Hall made the pivotal decision to pursue professional wrestling in 1984. Championship Wrestling from Florida recognized the untapped potential in this physically imposing newcomer with natural charisma. Immediately, they thrust him into the spotlight with a high-profile feud against the legendary Dusty Rhodes, baptism by fire for any wrestling rookie. What followed was a wrestling education unlike any other, as Hall traversed the territory system alongside tag team partner Dan Spivey, absorbing different styles and approaches, building the foundation for what would become one of wrestling's most influential careers. In 1985, after bouncing between promotions like a pinball, including stops at Jim Crockett Promotions in the Carolinas and Midwest Wrestling Association in Missouri, Hall landed in what many consider wrestling's prestigious finishing school, Vern Gaines' American Wrestling Association. This wasn't just another territory. The AWA stood as one of wrestling's powerhouse organizations, a breeding ground for superstars where legends were forged. Here, Hall underwent his first major character transformation. Who was this mustachioed powerhouse commanding attention? None other than Magnum Scott Hall, a fan favorite whose uncanny resemblance to television heartthrob Tom Selleck became his calling card. Behind the scenes, something remarkable was happening. Vern Gaines, with his legendary eye for talent, saw something special in Hall that few others had recognized. Whispers circulated throughout the locker room that Gagne believed he'd discovered his next Hulk Hogan, the superstar who'd slipped through his fingers years earlier. How serious was Gagne about this vision? Serious enough to personally instruct Hall to incorporate Hogan-esque moves and mannerisms into his performances, hoping lightning might strike twice. The strategy initially paid dividends. Hall's career trajectory soared as he formed a formidable partnership with the technically brilliant Curt Hennig, creating magic in the ring night after night. When that alliance eventually dissolved, Hall didn't miss a beat, transitioning seamlessly into singles competition where he quickly ascended the ranks. Before long, this former drifter found himself standing across the ring from legendary champions like the fearsome Stan Hansen and the technically superior Rick Martel, challenging for wrestling's most coveted prize, the AWA World Championship. What made Hall different from other physically imposing wrestlers wasn't just his look or his size. It was an intangible quality that made fans believe in him, a natural charisma that couldn't be taught. Though championship gold remained just beyond his grasp during this period, something more valuable was happening. Scott Hall was becoming a complete performer, developing the tools that would eventually make him one of wrestling's most influential figures. By 1989, Scott Hall's wrestling instincts weren't limited to the ring. His business acumen had sharpened too. Despite his growing popularity in the AWA, Hall recognized the warning signs: dwindling crowds, bounced paychecks, and an organization struggling to stay relevant in a rapidly changing industry. The once mighty AWA was taking on water fast. Would you stay aboard a sinking vessel when your career was at stake? What followed was a professional wrestler's version of a world tour, as Hall transformed himself into a wrestling nomad, testing waters across the globe. His journey began with a 6-month stint at World Championship Wrestling, where he first crossed paths with the Atlanta-based promotion that would later define his legacy. But the odyssey was just beginning. Like a master craftsman seeking new techniques, Hall expanded his wrestling education overseas. He battled in the technically demanding rings of New Japan Pro Wrestling, where Western showmanship met Eastern fighting spirit. Then it was off to Germany's Catch Wrestling Association, where the hard-hitting European style added new weapons to his arsenal. The sun-soaked arenas of Puerto Rico's World Wrestling Council saw him perform before passionate Caribbean crowds. He even participated in a WWE tryout that, puzzlingly, didn't immediately lead to a contract. What were they missing that they'd later regret? By 1991, Hall's compass pointed him back to WCW, where his evolution continued with the birth of the Diamond Stud, a character dripping with arrogance and machismo that channeled the cocky essence of Rick Rude. With the flamboyant Diamond Dallas Page as his manager and mouthpiece, this new incarnation of Hall cut through WCW's mid-card talent like Tommy Rich and Tom Zenk with devastating efficiency. It was during this return to WCW that wrestling history quietly began writing its most influential chapter. Hall formed a brief but significant partnership with another imposing figure using the moniker Vinny Vegas, none other than Kevin Nash. Though neither man could have known it then, this temporary alliance was merely the prelude to a friendship that would eventually reshape the wrestling industry. Despite finding his groove in WCW, when opportunity knocked in the form of a WWE contract in May 1992, Hall didn't hesitate. Sometimes success requires perfect timing, and Hall sensed that his moment had arrived. With his bags packed and his sights set on the biggest wrestling company in the world, Scott Hall prepared to answer the most important call of his career, one that would transform him from a wrestling journeyman into a household name. In May 1992, Scott Hall stepped onto WWE's grand stage as Razor Ramon, a character that would forever change wrestling history. But here's what makes it fascinating. This wasn't just another gimmick handed down from creative. The slick-talking, gold chain-wearing bad guy sprang directly from Hall's own imagination after immersing himself in Al Pacino's iconic portrayal of Tony Montana in Scarface. How many wrestlers create their own defining personas? Say hello to the bad guy. With those words, delivered in his perfect Pacino-inspired Cuban accent, Hall instantly captivated audiences. While other newcomers struggled to find their footing, Razor Ramon exploded onto the scene with a fully realized character. His methodical dismantling of WWE's undercard talent wasn't just about winning matches. It was calculated character building that made him look absolutely lethal. Each toothpick flicked at fallen opponents told a story of arrogance and superiority that audiences couldn't ignore. Something unexpected started happening during those early months. Despite being positioned as a villain, fans couldn't help but admire him. What makes certain bad guys so irresistible? Razor's swagger, confidence, and undeniable coolness made him one of wrestling's earliest examples of a cool heel. Someone fans secretly cheered despite their villainous actions. His perfectly slicked back hair, dazzling gold chains, and signature catchphrases created an aura that transcended traditional wrestling roles. WWE recognized they had something special and wasted no time throwing their new acquisition into the deep end. On September 14, 1992, primetime wrestling viewers witnessed Razor Ramon insert himself into wrestling royalty when he cost the beloved Macho Man Randy Savage a crucial match against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. Interfering against a legend like Savage wasn't just any debut feud. It was an immediate signal that management viewed Hall as main event material. This high-profile rivalry culminated at that year's Survivor Series, where the wrestling world witnessed something extraordinary: a tag team collision featuring Razor and Flair battling against Savage and Mr. Perfect. Can you imagine a better spotlight for a newcomer? Sharing the ring with three certified legends, Hall didn't just keep pace, he belonged there. The match accomplished exactly what it needed to, establishing Razor Ramon as more than just another new face. He was a superstar destined for greatness. Behind that confident smirk and those intimidating eyes, Scott Hall was proving what insiders had long suspected. He possessed one of wrestling's most brilliant creative minds. His innate understanding of character development, psychology, and presentation was creating something that would resonate with fans for decades to come. Little did anyone know, Razor Ramon was just the beginning of Scott Hall's revolutionary impact on professional wrestling. Following his impressive showing against Macho Man, Vince McMahon fast-tracked Razor Ramon straight into WWE's championship picture. The 1993 Royal Rumble saw the bad guy challenge none other than technical mastermind Bret Hitman Hart for the coveted WWE Championship. Although Hall didn't capture the gold that night, something more valuable occurred. The match convinced skeptics that this newcomer belonged in main events. By summer 1993, fan reaction had become impossible to ignore. WWE executives recognized a golden opportunity when a seemingly routine match against an unknown jobber named the 1-2-3 Kid created magic. Remember that shocking moment when the undersized underdog somehow pinned the mighty Razor Ramon on Monday Night Raw? The upset victory didn't just launch Sean Waltman's career, it provided the perfect storyline catalyst for Hall's character evolution. Instead of responding with anger, Razor showed unexpected sportsmanship. His growing respect for the young upstart who had embarrassed him transformed naturally into a full babyface turn. Fans who had been secretly cheering could now openly embrace the bad guy as one of their favorites. The former rivals even formed an unlikely partnership, teaming together against common enemies. Behind the curtain, something equally significant was developing. The on-screen partnership between Hall and Waltman mirrored a growing real-life friendship. They soon found themselves gravitating toward like-minded performers: Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, and an up-and-coming Triple H. Together, they formed what wrestling insiders would come to know as the Clique. This wasn't just another backstage friendship. The Clique quietly accumulated unprecedented influence within WWE's power structure. Their collective star power, creative input, and strategic positioning gave them the kind of backstage pull that wrestling had rarely seen before. At times, industry veterans wondered who truly controlled WWE's direction. Was it Vince McMahon or this tight-knit group of performers who protected each other's interests? How much control should wrestlers have over their own storylines? As Razor Ramon's popularity soared on screen, Scott Hall's backstage influence grew proportionally. The cool character fans adored, and the shrewd businessman behind it were both ascending simultaneously, setting the stage for one of wrestling's most consequential careers, and one of its most turbulent personal journeys. The moment Scott Hall truly cemented his place in WWE history was on October 11, 1993, when he defeated former AWA rival Rick Martel to claim his first Intercontinental Championship. It wasn't just another title change, it was validation. After years of wandering the wrestling landscape, Hall had not only found his perfect character but earned championship gold that proved his exceptional talent. But a championship reign rarely comes without controversy. When suspended former champion Shawn Michaels returned, he brought an unexpected claim. Since no one had actually defeated him for the title, wasn't he still the rightful champion? 2 championship belts, 2 elite performers, and 1 unprecedented solution. How would WWE determine the true champion? The answer revolutionized professional wrestling forever. At Wrestlemania 10, Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels climbed into Madison Square Garden and shattered expectations in WWE's first ever pay-per-view ladder match. While modern fans might take ladder matches for granted, imagine being in that arena witnessing something completely new. What happens when 2 of wrestling's most innovative minds are given freedom to create without a blueprint to follow? Magic happened. Their bodies told a story of risk, sacrifice, and championship desire that transcended traditional wrestling. Each painful impact and death-defying leap served a greater narrative purpose. Though Razor emerged victorious as the undisputed Intercontinental Champion, both men walked away as winners. They'd created a template that wrestlers would follow for decades to come. How do you follow up perfection? Razor's momentum carried him into a program with another Clique member, Diesel. Their contrasting styles, Ramon's technical prowess against Nash's raw power, created compelling television throughout the remainder of 1994, further elevating the Intercontinental Championship's prestige. Behind Hall's confident smirk lay a performer at the absolute peak of his powers, respected by peers, adored by fans, and pioneering new forms of in-ring storytelling that would influence generations of wrestlers. The question wasn't if Scott Hall would leave a legacy, but how monumental that legacy would become. Scott Hall's career reached a turning point after his SummerSlam 1995 ladder match with Shawn Michaels. Despite delivering wrestling classics against opponents like Jeff Jarrett, frustration quietly built as Hall watched his friends Nash and Michaels ascend to world championship status while he remained locked in the upper mid-card. The breaking point came when Hall directly approached Vince McMahon, asking what more he could do to reach the next level. McMahon's response was devastating. This was it. In McMahon's vision, Razor Ramon had reached his permanent position in the hierarchy. Meanwhile, WCW's Eric Bischoff was aggressively recruiting WWE talent with Ted Turner's financial backing. Hall wasn't just creatively frustrated. Kevin Nash revealed that financial concerns played a major role too, with both men feeling underpaid despite their drawing power. By early 1996, both Hall and Nash submitted their resignations to WWE. Their final appearance would become wrestling legend, the infamous curtain call incident at Madison Square Garden, where the Clique broke character to embrace publicly, shattering wrestling's sacred kayfabe. With his WWE contract expired and determined to prove his true value, Scott Hall prepared to make one of the most industry-altering impacts in professional wrestling history. What followed would shake professional wrestling to its core. On May 27, 1996, during an episode of Monday Nitro, Scott Hall emerged unexpectedly from the crowd. Dressed in street clothes rather than wrestling gear, he calmly stepped into the ring, grabbed a microphone, and delivered one of wrestling's most iconic promos. With his distinctive swagger, he warned WCW that he and some friends were coming to take over. 2 weeks later, Kevin Nash joined him, solidifying what fans would come to know as the Outsiders. The brilliance of this angle was its blurring of reality and fiction. Though both men were legitimately no longer employed by WWE, the storyline implied they were invaders sent by the competition. This worked-shoot approach created unprecedented buzz throughout the wrestling world. Were these actual WWE wrestlers invading? Was this real? The ambiguity fueled fan speculation and dramatically boosted ratings. Then came the moment that truly changed wrestling forever. At Bash at the Beach on July 7th, Hall and Nash promised a mystery partner for their 6-man tag match. When Hulk Hogan, wrestling's biggest hero for over a decade, emerged as their ally and turned villain for the first time since becoming a mainstream star, the audience's shock was palpable. As fans pelted the ring with garbage, Hogan proclaimed the formation of the New World Order, declaring war on WCW. The NWO storyline transcended typical wrestling narratives. Its gritty realism, cool factor, and anti-establishment attitude perfectly captured the emerging cultural zeitgeist of the late 1990s. The angle was so convincing that local authorities occasionally received calls reporting real assaults when NWO members attacked wrestlers backstage. People who had never watched wrestling before suddenly couldn't look away. Behind the scenes, Hall's creative fingerprints were all over the NWO concept. His understanding of character psychology, storytelling, and what fans truly wanted to see helped craft what many consider wrestling's most influential angle. The storyline didn't just change WCW, it forced WWE to evolve into the Attitude Era and transformed how wrestling stories would be told for generations to come. But Hall's creative genius extended beyond his own character. The NWO needed a worthy adversary, and it was reportedly Scott Hall who conceived what would become one of wrestling's most iconic transformations. At his suggestion, Sting abandoned his colorful surfer persona and emerged as a silent, brooding vigilante inspired by Brandon Lee's character in The Crow. This reinvention created the perfect counterbalance to the NWO's chaos, a dark avenger lurking in the rafters, waiting to deliver justice. Before that epic confrontation would materialize, the NWO continued expanding its ranks. The faction welcomed Scott's old friend Sean Waltman, now competing as Six, further strengthening the original Outsiders core. With their growing army, Hall and Nash dominated WCW's tag team division, capturing the tag team championships an impressive 6 times. Their battles against legendary teams like Harlem Heat, the technically superior Steiner brothers, and the prestigious Four Horsemen produced some of the era's most memorable matches. But as Hall's professional star reached its zenith, his personal demons grew increasingly difficult to conceal. The substance abuse issues that had followed him throughout his career intensified dramatically without WWE's strict oversight. What began as a controlled habit escalated into a dependency that became painfully apparent even to television viewers. His speech slurred during promos, his movements grew erratic, and his once imposing physique began deteriorating before fans' eyes. By March 1998, the situation had become so dire that WCW was forced to remove him from television entirely, mandating rehabilitation treatment. Despite the company's intervention efforts, Hall's addiction proved too powerful. When he eventually returned to Monday Nitro, the improvements were temporary at best. Fans who had cheered his character's rebellion now watched with genuine concern as the man behind Razor Ramon fought a much more serious battle outside the ring. By 1999, Hall had become nearly invisible on WCW programming, his appearances rare and concerning. In a deeply misguided decision that revealed the company's ethical bankruptcy, they attempted to monetize his struggles by rebranding him as Last Call Scott Hall, complete with an alcoholic gimmick that saw him stumbling to the ring with drink in hand. This exploitation of a man's genuine addiction marked a dark chapter for wrestling storytelling. By February 2000, following a defeat by Sid at Super Brawl 10, Hall vanished from WCW permanently. His subsequent career became a series of brief, troubled appearances. He surfaced briefly in Extreme Championship Wrestling and attempted runs in New Japan, but these stints only highlighted his deteriorating condition. Fans who had once marveled at his in-ring psychology now witnessed a performer clearly struggling to function. Wrestling seemed to offer an unexpected lifeline in 2002. WWE, having purchased WCW's assets the previous year, decided to resurrect the NWO concept with its original members. At February's No Way Out pay-per-view, Hall, Nash, and Hogan returned to WWE programming, interfering in Stone Cold Steve Austin's world title match against Chris Jericho. The resulting program between Hall and Austin held immense potential on paper, 2 of wrestling's most influential characters finally colliding. In reality, what could have been a dream match years earlier now felt hollow, with Hall clearly battling his personal demons throughout. Their WrestleMania 18 encounter disappointed expectations, remembered primarily for Hall's exaggerated selling of Austin's finishing move, rather than for competitive excellence. Behind the spectacular character and innovative mind existed a man fighting battles far more challenging than any wrestling opponent. The contrast between the charismatic performer who revolutionized wrestling and the struggling individual behind the character revealed the profound human cost hidden beneath wrestling's theatrical exterior. After WrestleMania, the NWO storyline crumbled when Hulk Hogan unexpectedly turned babyface and abandoned the group. Desperate to salvage their momentum, Hall and Nash recruited fellow Clique member Sean Waltman once again, attempting to recapture their faction's former glory. But the angle had lost its spark. By summer, WWE quietly dropped the NWO from television altogether. For Scott Hall, the end came even sooner. On May 7th, his WWE return came to an abrupt halt following the notorious plane ride from hell incident. During the transatlantic flight returning from England, Hall's behavior reportedly spiraled out of control. Alongside several other wrestlers, his actions created such chaos that WWE executives had finally reached their breaking point. The company terminated his contract immediately. Unemployed once again, Hall surveyed a wrestling landscape with increasingly limited options. He eventually landed in the fledgling Total Nonstop Action Wrestling promotion, making sporadic appearances during their 2002 launch period. These brief TNA stints continued through 2004 and 2005, though never developing into consistent programming. The years between major appearances weren't entirely lost time. Behind the scenes, Hall engaged in multiple attempts at rehabilitation. Though lasting sobriety remained elusive, these efforts demonstrated his awareness of his condition and desire to improve. Each attempt to get clean represented a personal battle far more challenging than any in-ring confrontation. On November 1st, 2007, a healthier-looking Scott Hall returned to TNA television. Fans witnessed a meaningful reunion as he joined forces with longtime friend Kevin Nash to battle the Angle Alliance. For those who had followed Hall's struggles, seeing him back in action, even temporarily, provided a glimmer of hope that the man behind the wrestler might finally be winning his most important fight. Following that brief return, Hall's reliability issues resurfaced when he no-showed scheduled appearances, severely damaging his relationship with TNA. The promotion kept him off television until January 2010, when he made a surprise comeback to form the band with Nash and Waltman, a thinly veiled recreation of their NWO Clique glory days. Despite Hulk Hogan's storyline attempts to remove Hall and Waltman from TNA programming, the band continued their disruptive path, launching attacks on various roster members. Their chaos culminated on May 13th, when the reunited Outsiders captured the TNA World Tag Team Championships. However, their reign would be short-lived. By June 14th, TNA stripped them of the titles following Hall's release from the company. Once again, Hall's ongoing substance abuse problems had derailed his career. This time, however, he recognized his desperate need for intervention. In a moment of clarity, he reached out to WWE, taking advantage of their policy that funded rehabilitation for former talent, regardless of their current employment status. This rehabilitation stay revealed a shocking medical complication. After battling a serious case of double pneumonia, doctors diagnosed Hall with epilepsy, a condition likely triggered by years of alcohol abuse. This diagnosis required him to begin a daily regimen of medications to control seizures, adding another layer of complexity to his already challenging health situation. And as if that wasn't bad enough, Hall also required a pacemaker during this period, creating yet another life-threatening health concern. His survival now depended on maintaining sobriety and following strict medical protocols, a challenge that proved overwhelming. Despite his awareness of these dangers, addiction's grip remained powerful. The following years brought multiple relapses, including a frightening April 2011 hospitalization after suffering cardiac issues triggered by an overdose. In 2013, when Hall's prospects seemed bleakest, salvation arrived through an unexpected source: Diamond Dallas Page. By this time, DDP had transformed himself from wrestling star to wellness advocate, having already helped Jake the Snake Roberts achieve sobriety after decades of substance abuse. When Page extended the same lifeline to Hall, offering him residence at his Atlanta home and a chance at rehabilitation, Hall recognized this might be his final opportunity. The transformation that followed was nothing short of remarkable. Within months, the physical and mental improvements were visible to everyone. Through a comprehensive approach combining therapy, detoxification, and DDP's innovative yoga program, Page accomplished what numerous rehabilitation facilities couldn't: he helped Scott Hall reclaim his life. The wrestling community rallied around Hall's recovery efforts. Through crowdfunding, DDP raised nearly $110,000 to cover essential medical procedures Hall desperately needed: hip replacement surgery and extensive dental work. These interventions addressed years of physical neglect and helped restore not just Hall's health but his dignity. The transformation in Scott Hall was nothing short of miraculous. Now sober and healthier than he'd been in decades, he re-emerged into the wrestling world to find an overwhelming outpouring of support from fans and industry colleagues alike. His journey toward redemption reached a powerful milestone in 2014 when WWE announced his induction into their Hall of Fame under the Razor Ramon persona. On April 5, 2014, Hall received his long-overdue recognition in a deeply emotional ceremony. Surrounded by his Click brothers on stage, he delivered one of wrestling's most memorable induction speeches, his signature catchphrase, "Bad times don't last, but bad guys do," taking on profound new meaning. The celebration wasn't just about his in-ring achievements. It marked the triumph of a man who had fought his way back from the edge of destruction. Since that night, with occasional minor setbacks, Hall has maintained his sobriety. The transformation extended beyond physical health, revealing a man at peace with both his legendary contributions to wrestling and his personal journey. His pride shifted to watching his son Cody Hall forge his own path in promotions like New Japan Pro Wrestling and Pro Wrestling Noah. Hall hasn't vanished completely from wrestling. He makes periodic appearances at WWE events, typically alongside his former Click or NWO teammates. These nostalgic moments remind fans of his enduring impact, not just as a consistently excellent performer when healthy, but as one of wrestling's most brilliant creative minds who developed iconic characters and played an instrumental role in crafting the revolutionary NWO storyline that changed professional wrestling forever. Why did Scott Hall never become world champion? This is perhaps wrestling's most fascinating what-if scenario. When Hall debuted as Razor Ramon, WWE immediately positioned him alongside main event talents like Ric Flair and Randy Savage. Throughout his WWE run, he remained at the near pinnacle of the card, delivering classic matches and memorable feuds. His Intercontinental Championship ladder matches with Shawn Michaels revolutionized the industry. The puzzle pieces were all there. Hall possessed the perfect combination of size, in-ring ability, and charisma. His microphone work was exceptional, and fans responded to him whether as heel or face. Yet the World Championship remained elusive. In WWE, timing worked against him. The company was investing heavily in Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and Diesel as their champions during Hall's peak years. When Hall approached Vince McMahon about advancing beyond the upper mid-card, McMahon's response revealed the ceiling WWE had placed on him. WCW presented new opportunities, but new obstacles emerged. As a founding NWO member, Hall became one of wrestling's biggest stars during the industry's hottest period. However, the spotlight often centered on Hogan, while Hall's escalating personal struggles made him increasingly unreliable. Jim Ross often said reliability was wrestling's most crucial trait for top champions. Hall's addiction issues, resulting in multiple DUIs and extended absences, made entrusting him with a world championship an enormous risk. Eric Bischoff, despite valuing Hall creatively, couldn't justify putting the company's centerpiece around his waist. The missed storytelling opportunities are heartbreaking to consider. A Hall rebellion against Hogan's leadership could have created compelling television. A championship program with Nash after the Goldberg streak ended might have elevated both men. Instead, Hall remained the extraordinary talent who never quite secured wrestling's ultimate prize. The cruel irony is that among the Click members and original NWO founders, Hall may have been the most complete performer. His combination of size, technical ability, character work, and audience connection was unmatched. What separated him from championship glory wasn't talent, but the personal demons that haunted him throughout his career. In March 2022, wrestling fans around the world were devastated when Scott Hall passed away at the age of 63. His death came after a series of health complications following hip replacement surgery. Hall had been hospitalized after suffering 3 heart attacks on March 12, 2022. These cardiac events occurred when a blood clot was dislodged during his hip surgery. He was placed on life support at Wellstar Kennestone Hospital in Marietta, Georgia, as his condition deteriorated. On March 14, 2022, his longtime friend and fellow wrestling legend Kevin Nash announced on social media that Hall's family had made the difficult decision to discontinue life support once all his loved ones could gather to say goodbye. Hall passed away later that evening. Wrestling's landscape today would be unrecognizable without Hall's contributions. Would the Attitude Era have happened without the NWO forcing WWE to evolve? Would wrestling have experienced its late 90s boom period? Hall's fingerprints remain on wrestling's DNA. Next up, Roddy Piper.
Roddy Piper was one of the most hated wrestlers in history. He could make entire arenas want to kill him just by walking to the ring in his kilt with bagpipes. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Despite being the biggest heel in wrestling during the 1980s boom, he never once held the WWF Championship, not even for a day. This wasn't an accident. There were backstage politics, power plays, and decisions made in boardrooms that kept the belt away from wrestling's most compelling villain. What turns a 13-year-old kid into one of wrestling's most feared villains? For Roderick George Toombs, the answer started in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, where his childhood was anything but normal. His father, Stanley Baird Toombs, worked for the Canadian National Railway Police, but that badge and uniform couldn't protect young Roderick from the chaos at home. The family moved constantly across Canada as his father's job demanded transfers from one posting to another. By the time he was a teenager, Roderick had been constantly relocated between many schools. School became a battlefield for him. He didn't fit in anywhere, and he didn't want to. Teachers saw him as a troublemaker. Other kids saw him as the weird new guy who would probably be gone in a few months anyway. He got into fights regularly, and his grades suffered. The constant moving meant he never formed lasting friendships or learned how to trust people. At 13 years old, he was expelled from school for carrying a switchblade. That was the moment his childhood officially ended. His father kicked him out of the house after the expulsion. Roderick found himself living in youth hostels across Western Canada, bouncing from one city to another with nothing but the clothes on his back. He slept in train stations, under bridges, and anywhere else he could find shelter. He learned fast how to survive on the streets, dumpster diving for food and panhandling for change. Some nights he went to bed hungry. The anger that would later make him famous started building during those months on the street. Every day was about survival. Every person he met might try to take advantage of him or hurt him. He developed a hard edge that most people don't get until they're adults, if they ever get it at all. The pain wasn't just physical from sleeping rough or going without food. It was the emotional pain of being abandoned by his own family when he needed them most. Boxing gyms became his refuge during this period. He discovered he had natural fighting ability and trainers who were willing to work with him. The discipline of boxing gave him structure that had been missing from his life. He claimed amateur boxing success, including golden gloves in interviews. A claim often repeated but not confirmed in tournament lists. He also trained in judo, learning grappling techniques that would serve him well later. These weren't hobbies for him, like they might be for other teenagers. These were survival skills. His first wrestling experiences came when he was still a teenager, training in Canada and working with promoters like Al Tomko. His early AWA work put him in the ring opposite veterans like Larry Hennig, and he later worked with trainers including Gene LeBell and Leo Garibaldi. These mentors saw something in the angry young man that others might have missed. Roderick had legitimate fighting skills from his boxing and judo training, but more than that, he had an authenticity that most wrestlers spend years trying to fake. When he got angry in the ring, it wasn't an act. The other wrestlers noticed this right away. Most guys who came into wrestling had to learn how to make their emotions bigger and more dramatic for the crowd. Roderick's problem was the opposite. He had to learn how to control his real anger so it didn't get him arrested or banned from arenas. His early matches were raw and sometimes dangerous because he hadn't learned how to work safely with opponents while still maintaining that edge that made him special. His experiences sleeping rough had taught him how to read people quickly and accurately. He could spot weakness or fear in opponents before they even knew they were showing it. He learned how to use psychological warfare as effectively as any physical move. The other wrestlers were often older and more experienced, but most of them had never faced genuine hardship like he had. They were playing tough guys. He actually was one. What made him different from other wrestlers with hard backgrounds was his intelligence. He wasn't just a street tough who could throw punches. He studied how crowds reacted to different things he said or did. He watched other wrestlers' promos and matches, learning what worked and what didn't. He began to understand that his real-life pain and anger could be his greatest weapons if he learned how to channel them properly. During his youth, he had also learned to play bagpipes, a skill that seemed unrelated to wrestling at the time. But like everything else from his difficult past, it would eventually become part of his arsenal. The authenticity that came from his brutal upbringing became his calling card. When he cut promos talking about being tough or surviving hard times, every word carried weight because audiences could sense he had lived it. His difficult childhood wasn't just backstory for his wrestling character. It was the foundation that everything else would be built on. The anger, the survival instincts, the ability to read people and situations quickly, the legitimate fighting skills, and most importantly, the authentic edge that made audiences uncomfortable. He had all the raw materials needed to become wrestling's most hated villain. But having the tools and knowing how to use them were two different things entirely. Portland Wrestling became the laboratory where Piper built his villain act. Promoter Don Owen ran the Pacific Northwest Territory with a tight ship, but gave wrestlers freedom to experiment with their characters as long as they could generate heat. Piper found himself in the perfect environment for learning what made people truly angry. The first thing he discovered was that being genuinely disliked was actually a valuable skill in wrestling. Most wrestlers spent their careers trying to get fans to cheer for them, but someone had to be the bad guy, and there was serious money in making people hate you. The more they hated you, the more they would pay to see you lose. It was backwards logic that made perfect sense in the wrestling business. His breakthrough came when he started incorporating his Scottish heritage into his character. He began wearing kilts to the ring and playing bagpipes during his entrance. The crowd reaction was immediate and violent. Fans in Portland didn't just boo him. They threw things at him. They screamed death threats. They tried to climb over the guardrails to get at him. The bagpipes were particularly effective because the sound was so annoying that it made people angry before he even started wrestling. The kilt and bagpipes weren't just costumes and props. He turned them into weapons for psychological warfare. He used the bagpipes as purposeful provocation, part of his routine to rile crowds. He used the kilt and staged gestures to push conservative crowds past their breaking point. Every detail was calculated to make people uncomfortable and angry. He watched other wrestlers' promos and learned the psychology of crowd manipulation. Some wrestlers tried to be scary, others tried to be arrogant. Piper realized that the most effective approach was to be genuinely irritating. He developed a speaking style that was part Scottish accent, part street smart punk, and completely annoying. His voice had a nasal quality that cut through arena noise and got under people's skin. His tag team partnership with Rick Martel gave him a chance to learn from a technically superior wrestler while developing his character work. Martel was a gifted athlete who could make anyone look good in the ring. Working with him taught Piper how to pace a match and build drama. They won multiple Pacific Northwest Tag Team Championships together, establishing Piper's credibility as both a performer and a draw. The success was always secondary to the reaction they generated. Crowds would get so worked up during their matches that security had to be increased. Fans would wait outside the arena after shows, hoping to confront them. The local newspapers started writing about the wrestlers as if they were real criminals, rather than entertainers. Portland Wrestling became his laboratory for testing what made audiences truly angry. He tried different approaches in different towns to see what generated the strongest reactions. In some places, insulting local sports teams worked best. In others, making fun of local politicians got bigger heat. He learned that the key was finding whatever people cared about most and then attacking it without mercy. His mic work during this period was fearless in ways that shocked even other wrestlers. Most heels would insult the crowd in generic ways. Piper would get specific and personal. He would research local news stories and work them into his promos. He would make fun of local tragedies or economic problems. Other wrestlers thought he was taking things too far, but the crowds proved them wrong with their passionate hatred. Wrestling magazines started writing about him as one of the most hated wrestlers in the country. Other promoters began calling Don Owen to ask about booking him for their territories. His reputation for generating genuine heat was spreading beyond the Pacific Northwest. Wrestlers from other regions would visit Portland shows just to watch him work and try to figure out what made him so effective. He was creating something entirely new in wrestling. Most heels relied on standard tactics, like cheating or making fun of local sports teams. Piper had developed a character that was so thoroughly irritating and offensive that audiences forgot they were watching entertainment. They genuinely wanted to hurt him. That level of emotional investment was exactly what wrestling promoters were looking for. The other wrestlers backstage started treating him differently. Some were jealous of the attention he was getting. Others were genuinely impressed by his ability to manipulate crowds. A few were actually afraid of him because they weren't sure where the character ended and the real person began. His reputation for unpredictability became part of his appeal to promoters who wanted something different from their main event heels. Portland wasn't just where Piper learned to wrestle. It was where he learned to weaponize hatred and turn it into the most valuable commodity in professional wrestling. But his education in villainy was about to take a much more dangerous turn. The skills he had perfected in the Pacific Northwest were about to be tested in ways that would leave permanent scars. His next challenge came in Jim Crockett Promotions, where the competition was tougher and the stakes higher than anything he had experienced in Portland. This was serious wrestling territory with television coverage that reached millions of homes across the southeastern United States. His arrival in Mid-Atlantic wrestling put him directly in the path of Greg the Hammer Valentine, already established as one of the territory's top heels with legitimate amateur wrestling credentials and wrestling royalty bloodlines as Johnny Valentine's son. Their rivalry started over the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship. Valentine held the title and saw Piper as an upstart from the Northwest who didn't belong in his territory. Piper saw Valentine as everything he hated about wrestling establishment figures who thought they were better than street fighters like him. Neither man was willing to show weakness or give ground to the other. Their matches became increasingly violent as each tried to prove he was tougher than his opponent. The feud escalated when Valentine injured Piper's ear during one of their encounters. He used a move that drove his elbow directly into Piper's ear with unusual force. The injury was real and serious, causing immediate pain and hearing problems. But instead of backing down or taking time off to heal, Piper used the injury to fuel his anger and make their rivalry even more personal. He started cutting promos about how Valentine was trying to end his career and destroy his livelihood. Valentine played his part perfectly, claiming that he was going to finish what he started and put Piper out of wrestling permanently. He would target the injured ear during every match, applying submission holds that put pressure on the damaged area. The crowds could see that Piper was in genuine pain, which made them more invested in seeing him get revenge. This wasn't fake wrestling drama. This was real violence being used to sell tickets. The build-up to the dog collar match at the first Starrcade in 1983 was unlike anything wrestling had seen before. Both men would be connected by a steel chain attached to dog collars around their necks. There would be no escape and no way to avoid punishment. The match was designed to be the final chapter in their brutal rivalry. Wrestling fans across the country knew they were about to witness something special and violent. The dog collar match itself lived up to every bit of hype that surrounded it. Connected by the chain, both men used it as a weapon to choke and beat each other. They fought all over the arena, not just in the ring. The chain left marks on both wrestlers as they used it to slam each other into ring posts and barriers. Blood flowed freely as the match turned into something that looked more like a real fight than sports entertainment. During the match, Valentine broke Piper's eardrum. The trauma from the chain and Valentine's continued targeting of the area caused permanent damage that would affect his hearing for the rest of his life. Piper later lost roughly 50 to 75% of his hearing in that ear. This wasn't a storyline injury that would heal after a few weeks. This was real damage that he would carry with him forever. Instead of ending his career, the injury became part of his legend. Wrestling fans and other wrestlers saw what he was willing to sacrifice for his craft. The ear injury proved that his toughness wasn't just an act or part of his character. He was genuinely willing to risk permanent physical damage to put on a show for the fans. This reputation for real toughness made other wrestlers respect him and fear him at the same time. His wars with Ric Flair during this period showed another side of his abilities. Flair was the complete opposite of Valentine, a technical wrestler who relied on psychology and showmanship rather than pure violence. Working with Flair taught Piper how to adjust his style to different opponents while maintaining his edge. When Piper beat Ric Flair for the NWA United States Heavyweight Championship, it established him as a main event player in one of wrestling's most competitive territories. He defended the title against top wrestlers from across the country and proved he could carry a major championship. These matches elevated him from regional star to national sensation. Wrestling magazines started featuring him on covers. Other territories began making offers to book him for their biggest shows. His reputation for generating heat and delivering in big matches made him one of the most sought-after wrestlers in the country. The ear injury proved Piper would sacrifice his body for his craft, and it made him more dangerous than ever. His willingness to work through real pain and injury showed a level of dedication that impressed even his harshest critics backstage. This reputation for authentic toughness caught the attention of Vince McMahon, who was always looking for wrestlers who could handle the pressures of national television and create moments that would shock audiences beyond anything they had seen before. McMahon found exactly what he was looking for when he signed Piper to the WWE in 1984. Television was becoming crucial to wrestling success, and McMahon needed programming that would keep audiences watching between matches. He created Piper's Pit as a talk show segment where Piper would interview wrestlers and celebrities in a cheap studio setting with fake plants and a cheesy backdrop. Piper was perfect for hosting because his natural ability to irritate people could turn any interview into a confrontation within minutes. The segment launched without much fanfare, but McMahon knew they needed a moment that would shock audiences and create mainstream attention. Wrestling was trying to break into popular culture beyond just wrestling fans. The setup came when Jimmy Snuka was booked as a guest. Snuka was one of the most popular wrestlers in the company, a high-flying performer from the Pacific Islands. Piper arrived at the studio with a bag of coconuts as props, telling the production crew he was going to demonstrate the hardness of Snuka's head by smashing them. Everyone assumed this was typical Piper showboating. The cameras started rolling, and Piper began making insulting comments about Snuka's background and intelligence. He started smashing coconuts with his bare hands, making jokes about how they reminded him of Snuka's head. The audience was already uncomfortable with the racial undertones, but then Piper grabbed one of the broken coconut pieces and smashed it directly into Snuka's skull. Snuka went down like he had been hit with a baseball bat. Blood started flowing from his head immediately. The attack looked completely real because in many ways it was. Piper had used a real coconut as a weapon and caused genuine injury. The studio audience went silent before erupting in boos and screams. Some people tried to rush the set to help Snuka or attack Piper. The aftermath generated more heat than most wrestlers created in their entire careers. Wrestling fans were outraged by the apparent brutality and racism of the attack. Mainstream media picked up the story as an example of how violent and offensive wrestling had become. The WWE received hundreds of angry phone calls and letters demanding that Piper be fired or arrested. But the controversy was exactly what the WWE needed. The coconut incident became the most talked about moment in wrestling that year. It established Piper's Pit as must-see television and proved that the WWE could create moments that transcended the wrestling audience. Every wrestling fan in the country wanted to see what Piper would do next. Piper's Pit became the template for all future wrestling talk show segments, influencing later shows like Chris Jericho's Highlight Reel and The Miz's Miz TV. Other promotions started creating their own interview segments hosted by heel wrestlers. The format of having a controversial host interview guests in a setting designed to create conflict became a standard part of wrestling television. Other memorable moments on the show kept audiences coming back week after week. Piper would insult local sports teams, make fun of other wrestlers' personal lives, and create situations that led to brawls and destruction of the set. Each segment was designed to advance storylines while generating maximum heat for upcoming matches. The segment elevated both Piper and his guests to new levels of fame within the wrestling industry. Wrestlers who appeared on Piper's Pit automatically became more important in fans' minds. Being chosen as a guest was seen as a sign that the company had big plans for a wrestler. The show gave wrestlers a platform to build their characters through confrontations and interviews, rather than just in-ring action. Piper's ability to generate controversy and mainstream attention made him invaluable to McMahon's expansion plans. His talk show segment proved that wrestling could create compelling television content beyond just matches. The format allowed for character development and storyline advancement in ways that traditional wrestling programming couldn't match. The success of Piper's Pit demonstrated that Piper wasn't just a wrestler who could work matches. He was an entertainer who could carry television programming and generate the kind of mainstream buzz that McMahon needed for his national expansion. His natural charisma and ability to create controversy made him perfect for the bigger stage that wrestling was about to enter. The coconut incident and the ongoing success of Piper's Pit established him as one of wrestling's most valuable performers. He had proven he could generate heat, carry television segments, and create moments that people would never forget. His villainous charisma was becoming essential to the WWE's plans for something much bigger than anyone in wrestling had ever attempted before. WrestleMania 1 was a make-or-break moment for Vince McMahon's national expansion plan, and it all depended on whether people would pay to see Piper lose. By 1985, McMahon had spent millions of dollars buying out regional promoters, signing their biggest stars, and putting everything on cable television. But the whole scheme would collapse if he couldn't prove that wrestling could draw mainstream audiences willing to pay premium prices for live events. The WWE's national expansion strategy was built around the rock and wrestling connection with MTV. McMahon understood that wrestling needed to break out of its traditional audience to survive. MTV was the perfect partner because it reached exactly the demographic he wanted: young people with disposable income who weren't already wrestling fans. The music television network was looking for programming that would generate controversy and keep viewers watching. Wrestling provided both. The entire future of wrestling hinged on the success of the first WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden. McMahon had invested everything he owned and borrowed millions more to finance the event. If it failed, he would lose his company and probably go bankrupt. Other wrestling promoters around the country were watching and hoping he would fail, so they could keep their territories safe from his expansion. The pressure was enormous. Piper's central role in the main event alongside Paul Orndorff against Hulk Hogan and Mr. T made him the key to the whole operation. The match was designed around celebrity involvement to attract mainstream media attention. Mr. T was one of the biggest stars in entertainment at the time because of the A-Team television show. But having celebrities in wrestling matches was risky because they couldn't actually wrestle and might embarrass everyone involved. His feud with Hogan had been building for months through Piper's Pit segments and other WWE programming. The war to settle the score aired on MTV and helped build the Hogan-Piper storyline before WrestleMania, drawing huge ratings and proving wrestling could succeed on cable television. Hogan was the all-American hero, Piper was the abrasive antagonist, a contrast MTV-friendly mainstream audiences could easily pick sides on. The involvement with celebrities brought mainstream credibility that wrestling had never experienced before. Mr. T's participation meant that major entertainment media had to cover WrestleMania as a legitimate news story. Television shows, newspapers, and magazines that normally ignored wrestling were forced to write about it because one of their biggest stars was involved. This coverage reached millions of people who had never watched a wrestling match. The massive media attention that Piper helped generate went beyond anything wrestling had achieved before. He appeared on talk shows, gave interviews to major newspapers, and became the face of wrestling's villain side for mainstream audiences. His ability to play the perfect bad guy in interviews made journalists want to write about him because he gave them controversial quotes that would attract readers. Celebrity involvement expanded beyond just the main event participants. Muhammad Ali served as the special guest referee, adding even more mainstream star power to the event. Cyndi Lauper was involved in other storylines on the card. The combination of wrestling stars and entertainment celebrities created a spectacle that attracted attention from people who normally wouldn't care about professional wrestling. His heel work made Hogan look like an even bigger hero to casual fans who were watching wrestling for the first time. Piper's job was to be so thoroughly unlikable that anyone opposing him would automatically become the good guy. He insulted American values, made fun of popular culture, and acted like everything decent people believed in was stupid. This made Hogan's victory even more satisfying for audiences. Other crossover moments during this period included appearances by wrestlers on MTV programming and music videos featuring wrestling storylines. The partnership between WWE and MTV created a cultural phenomenon that made wrestling cool for teenagers and young adults who had never watched it before. Piper was central to many of these crossover moments because his character was easy for non-wrestling fans to understand and hate. The success of Wrestlemania changed wrestling forever by proving that the business could attract mainstream audiences and generate massive revenue from pay-per-view events. The event sold out Madison Square Garden and drew significant closed-circuit television audiences around the country. More importantly, it established wrestling as legitimate entertainment that could compete with other major sporting events for audience attention and media coverage. Piper's villainous charisma didn't just help Wrestlemania succeed. It created the template for wrestling's mainstream future, where controversial characters and celebrity involvement would become standard elements of major events. His work as the primary antagonist proved that wrestling needed great villains, just as much as it needed heroic champions. But despite headlining the event that launched wrestling into the mainstream and proving himself as one of the industry's biggest draws, something was missing from Piper's resume that should have been automatic for a star of his magnitude. The WWE Championship remained out of reach, despite every indication that Piper had earned it. By 1986, he had proven himself as the most effective heel in wrestling history. He had main-evented WrestleMania, revolutionized wrestling television, and generated more heat than any wrestler of his generation. Fans packed arenas specifically to see him lose. His merchandise sold despite him being the villain. Every metric that mattered in wrestling showed he was ready for a championship run. But the WWE Championship never came. This wasn't an oversight or booking mistake. Piper never held the WWE Championship during his peak years in the 1980s, creating one of wrestling's most notable anomalies. Despite his massive popularity and proven drawing power, the title remained off-limits. The decision came from the top of the company and reflected backstage considerations that had nothing to do with his ability or fan support. Wrestling insiders knew something was happening behind the scenes that kept the title away from one of the company's biggest stars. 3 documented factors likely contributed to keeping the championship away from Piper. First, Vince McMahon's booking philosophy centered around having controllable, media-friendly champions who could represent the company in mainstream appearances. Hulk Hogan was perfect for this role because he stayed in character, followed company guidelines, and never created controversy outside of scripted storylines. He was reliable and predictable in ways that made McMahon comfortable putting him in front of corporate sponsors and television executives. Second, concerns about Piper's unpredictable nature and outspoken behavior created problems for McMahon's vision of mainstream success. Piper had a reputation for speaking his mind, regardless of company policy or political considerations. He would go off script during interviews and create situations that made corporate partners nervous. His later controversies, including an HBO interview that WWE used as cause for his release in 2003, demonstrated the kind of unpredictable behavior that made him risky as a flagship champion. Third, occasional behind-the-scenes conflicts reinforced McMahon's reluctance to give Piper more power within the company. Reports and backstage accounts indicate that Piper's independent streak and willingness to challenge authority created tension. McMahon valued loyalty and predictability in his champions. He wanted wrestlers who would follow company direction without question and represent the WWE according to his vision. The company's expansion into mainstream entertainment required champions who could appear on talk shows and corporate events without creating controversy. Piper's interview style was designed to generate heat and make people angry. This worked perfectly for building wrestling storylines, but it could backfire in mainstream media appearances where controversy might hurt business relationships. McMahon needed champions who could turn the heel act off when representing the company outside wrestling contexts. However, the championship snub wasn't universal across promotions. Piper did hold other meaningful titles that demonstrated he was trusted with major belts elsewhere. He won NWA United States Championships during his time in Jim Crockett Promotions and later captured the Intercontinental Championship in 1992. His multiple United States title reigns in JCP and WCW showed that other promoters saw him as championship material. This adds nuance to the snub narrative and suggests the issue was specific to McMahon's vision for the WWE's top prize. Other wrestlers and industry insiders viewed the obvious snub as evidence of backstage politics that had nothing to do with wrestling ability. Veterans who worked with both Hogan and Piper knew that Piper was just as capable of carrying the company as champion. His matches drew money and his storylines kept fans interested. The fact that he never got the opportunity, despite his obvious qualifications, created resentment among wrestlers who felt politics trumped merit. Wrestling journalists and industry observers began writing about the championship snub as an example of how business considerations sometimes overrode wrestling logic. Fans started questioning why their favorite heel never got rewarded with title runs, despite being more entertaining than many champions. The situation became an open secret within wrestling circles that McMahon's booking decisions were influenced by factors beyond just drawing power and fan reaction. Business considerations ultimately outweighed wrestling merit in championship decisions. The WWE was trying to become a mainstream entertainment company that could attract corporate sponsors and television deals. Having an unpredictable champion who might say something controversial could jeopardize these business relationships. McMahon chose safety over excitement when it came to his top championship. Piper's championship snub revealed the politics behind wrestling's biggest prize. The championship went to wrestlers who fit McMahon's vision of what a champion should be, rather than who fans most wanted to see win it. This policy showed how business considerations could override wrestling logic, even when it meant leaving money on the table. His success would have to come from other areas of entertainment, where his unpredictable nature might be seen as an asset rather than a liability. Hollywood became the proving ground where Piper's unpredictable nature finally paid off. Most wrestlers who try acting end up embarrassing themselves. Piper became a cult icon. By the late 1980s, his wrestling career had reached its peak, but the championship snub left him looking for new challenges. Hollywood offered an opportunity to prove his talents extended beyond the wrestling ring. Most wrestlers who made the transition to movies failed spectacularly, becoming punchlines rather than legitimate actors. The entertainment industry viewed wrestlers as muscle-bound performers who couldn't handle real acting demands. Director John Carpenter was working on a science fiction film called They Live and needed someone who could convincingly play a blue-collar drifter who discovers an alien conspiracy. The role required an actor who looked tough enough to be believable as a construction worker, but could also handle dialogue and carry dramatic scenes. Carpenter had seen Piper's work on television and thought his natural intensity might translate well to film. Wrestling fans and movie critics both expected him to fail as an actor when news of his casting broke. Wrestling had a terrible reputation in Hollywood circles. Movie executives saw wrestlers as cartoon characters who couldn't handle serious dramatic work. Critics assumed They Live would be another cheaply made action movie designed to capitalize on wrestling's popularity without any real artistic merit. His preparation for the role surprised everyone involved in the production. He approached acting with the same dedication he brought to wrestling, studying his character's background and motivations. He worked with acting coaches to improve his delivery and learn film techniques that were different from wrestling promos. The other actors on set were impressed by how seriously he took the craft and how willing he was to take direction. They Live was released in 1988 and featured the famous line, "I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum." His character's declaration captured audiences' imagination and became one of the most quoted movie phrases of the decade. The line was delivered with perfect timing and showed he had natural comedic timing that nobody expected from his wrestling persona. They Live became a cult classic that elevated his profile beyond wrestling into mainstream entertainment culture. The movie's themes about media manipulation and hidden control structures resonated with audiences who saw it as commentary on American society. His performance as the working-class hero who fights against corporate conspiracy made him a legitimate action star. Critics who expected to dismiss his acting were forced to admit he had genuine screen presence and later acknowledged him as a cult icon. His other film work included Hell Comes to Frogtown and a string of B-movies and TV roles that turned him into a cult actor. He approached each project with the same professionalism he showed in They Live, building a resume that proved his acting success wasn't just luck. His natural charisma translated well to different types of entertainment, making him a valuable performer for various projects. He balanced his entertainment career with periodic returns to wrestling, using his Hollywood credentials to negotiate better deals and more creative control. His acting success raised his mainstream profile and gave him crossover credibility that helped him negotiate returns and shaped how promoters viewed him. Wrestling promoters who had previously dismissed him as just another wrestler now saw him as a legitimate entertainment personality with crossover appeal. Television work became a regular part of his schedule as producers discovered he could handle both dramatic and comedic roles. He appeared on popular shows as both guest star and recurring character, proving his acting range extended beyond action movies. His entertainment success changed how wrestling promoters viewed him when he made return appearances. Instead of being seen as just another wrestler looking for one more payday, he was now a proven entertainment commodity with value beyond wrestling. The success in Hollywood proved that wrestlers could be legitimate entertainers if they had the right combination of natural talent and professional dedication. Other wrestlers began following his path into acting, though few achieved his level of success. He had broken down barriers that existed between wrestling and mainstream entertainment, proving that athletic entertainers could succeed in other areas of show business. The Hollywood experience taught him new skills that he brought back to wrestling. His improved acting ability made his wrestling promos more convincing and entertaining. He understood camera angles and timing in ways that made his wrestling performances more polished. The crossover between his acting and wrestling careers created a synergy that benefited both. His success didn't just prove wrestlers could be legitimate entertainers. It opened doors for future wrestlers who wanted to expand beyond the ring into other areas of entertainment. He had created a template that others could follow, showing that wrestling could be a stepping stone to broader entertainment success rather than a dead-end career. But even with Hollywood success under his belt, Piper wasn't finished with wrestling. The ring kept calling him back for battles that would test more than just his acting skills. His later career became a battle against time and his own body's limitations. By the mid-1990s, Piper was approaching his 40s and decades of punishment were taking their toll. His knees ached from countless matches, his back hurt from taking bumps on concrete floors and steel chairs. The hearing loss from his ear injury years earlier was getting worse, but he wasn't ready to retire completely from the business that had made him famous. Age and health issues began affecting his ability to perform at his previous level when he signed with World Championship Wrestling in late 1996. WCW was trying to compete with the WWE by signing established stars who could draw television ratings and pay-per-view buys. Piper still had name recognition and the ability to cut promos that generated heat, but his in-ring work was noticeably slower than it had been during his prime years in the 1980s. His World Championship Wrestling run gave him opportunities that had been denied during his World Wrestling Entertainment peak. He debuted in late 1996, feuded with Hogan and the NWO, briefly served as on-air commissioner, and had several high-profile matches and angles through 1999 before leaving in 2000. The Monday Night Wars between WCW and WWE meant both companies were desperate for star power and willing to push older wrestlers in ways they might not have considered during normal circumstances. His feuds with Hulk Hogan took on new meaning in WCW because both men were older and their careers were winding down. Their matches lacked the athleticism of their younger days, but made up for it with storytelling and the history between the characters. Fans who had watched their rivalry in the WWE during the 1980s were interested in seeing how their story would continue in a different company with different circumstances. Piper beat Hogan in a non-title Starrcade main event, a big win on paper, but not an actual world title change. The victory came more than a decade after most people thought he deserved a major championship run. While he was past his physical prime, the high-profile win proved he could still draw money and generate interest from wrestling audiences. His role as WCW commissioner allowed him to stay involved in wrestling storylines without having to wrestle full-time matches that his body could no longer handle effectively. The position gave him authority over other wrestlers and let him use his promo skills to advance storylines and create television drama. It was a natural fit for someone who had always been better at talking than most wrestlers were at wrestling. His continued involvement in wrestling through mentoring younger wrestlers gave him purpose during his later years. He worked with wrestlers like Virgil and Sean O'Haire, who wanted to improve their promo skills and learn how to generate heat from audiences. His knowledge about psychology and crowd manipulation was valuable to wrestlers who had athletic ability, but lacked the verbal skills that had made him famous. Controversial moments and backstage incidents throughout his later career showed his uncompromising nature hadn't softened with age. His 2003 HBO interview created problems with WWE management, who cited the interview and concerns about self-destructive behavior as reasons for his release. He still spoke his mind about wrestling politics and wasn't afraid to criticize decisions made by promoters or other wrestlers. Some people in the wrestling business found his outspokenness refreshing, while others thought he should have mellowed with age. His reputation as someone who always spoke his mind, regardless of political considerations, sometimes created problems with wrestling promoters who preferred wrestlers to follow company lines without question. He had opinions about wrestling booking, business practices, and industry politics that he shared whether people wanted to hear them or not. This honesty made him respected by fans, but sometimes difficult for promoters to work with. His diagnosis with Hodgkin's lymphoma in 2006 forced him to confront his own mortality in ways that wrestling injuries never had. Cancer was an opponent that couldn't be defeated through toughness or determination alone. The disease required medical treatment and lifestyle changes that were completely different from anything he had faced during his wrestling career. He finished radiation treatment on January 15, 2007. His openness about his health struggles surprised people who expected him to keep private matters to himself. Instead of hiding his cancer battle, he spoke publicly about his treatment and the challenges of dealing with a life-threatening illness. This honesty about his health problems showed a vulnerable side that audiences had rarely seen during his wrestling career, when he projected invincibility and toughness. Even when his body was failing, his mind and mouth remained as sharp as ever. The cancer treatment weakened him physically, but didn't affect his ability to cut promos or analyze wrestling storylines. He could still generate heat from audiences and create memorable moments, even when he couldn't perform at his previous athletic level. His final years proved that his greatest weapon had always been his ability to make people feel something through his words and presence. When Roddy Piper died in his sleep on July 31, 2015, at age 61, the wrestling world lost more than just a performer. They lost the blueprint for what a wrestling villain could be. Medical reports cite cardiopulmonary arrest caused by hypertension, with a pulmonary embolism listed as a contributing factor. His death shocked everyone because he had seemed to be recovering from his cancer battle and was still making occasional appearances. His WWE Hall of Fame induction in 2005, inducted by Ric Flair, had already cemented his legacy before his passing. WWE held a 10-bell salute on Raw, and many top stars, including The Rock and Ric Flair, publicly paid tribute to his influence on their careers. Piper didn't get the WWE title, but he rewrote what a villain in wrestling could do, with Piper's pit, showmanship, and real risk roof-raising promos that still shape heels today.
Next up, The Undertaker. What if I told you that the most feared wrestler in history is actually the most likable guy in the locker room? Yeah, we're talking about a guy who never broke character for 30 years, went through 17 surgeries just to make sure every match was perfect. So how exactly did a wrestler with an awful career start become the most respected WWE star ever? Well, let's hold on a second. To understand The Undertaker, let's take it back to March 24, 1965. when Mark William Calloway was born in the sprawling city of Houston, Texas. He was the youngest of 5 boys in the family. Already towering at 6'10" in high school, Mark dominated both basketball and football at Waltrip High. His height and talent earned him basketball scholarships, first to Angelina College, then to Texas Wesleyan University, where he starred for the Rams in 1985-86. Everyone expected him to keep playing basketball after college, but instead, wrestling called. He'd loved it since he was a kid, and in late 1986, he started training under veteran wrestler Buzz Sawyer. His first break came with World Class Championship Wrestling, where he donned a mask and adopted the persona of Texas Red. His first match was a loss against the legendary Bruiser Brody with Percy Pringle, who'd later play a huge role in his career as his manager. Mark moved on to the Continental Wrestling Association, where Dutch Mantle took him under his wing. There, he tried out different characters like the Master of Pain and the Punisher. Success came quickly. As Master of Pain, he beat Jerry Lawler for the USWA World title. And as the Punisher, he won the WCWA Texas title from Eric Embry. Though new to wrestling, Mark carried himself like a pro and earned everyone's respect, quickly becoming known as someone you could count on in the ring. His growing reputation opened doors at World Championship Wrestling in 1990, where he emerged as Mean Mark Callis, embracing a darker, more mysterious persona. The character, as described by legendary announcer Jim Ross, was portrayed as an enigmatic figure with an affinity for Ozzy Osbourne's music and exotic snakes. This new direction led to a partnership with Dan Spivey, forming the imposing tag team known as the Skyscrapers. The duo quickly made their mark, particularly through their memorable feud with the legendary Road Warriors. However, his WCW journey took an unexpected turn when Ole Anderson, the promotion's lead booker, told him he'd never draw a dime in the wrestling business. Boy, was he wrong. Instead of giving up, Mark kept working while quietly planning his exit. During this time, he got a small part in Hulk Hogan's movie, Suburban Commando. This turned out to be huge. Hogan saw his potential and started pushing for WWE to sign him. When his WCW contract ended, he met with Vince McMahon. Surprisingly, the WWF chairman initially showed little enthusiasm for the future superstar. However, this skepticism quickly dissolved as McMahon got to know the performer, leading to a contract offer and the development of what would become one of wrestling's most iconic characters. The result was The Undertaker, a mysterious mortician from Death Valley who couldn't feel pain and put his beaten opponents in body bags. Now, it might seem obvious The Undertaker would work, but back then, most weird wrestling characters failed badly. What made this different was how completely he committed to the role. He tested it out at smaller shows as Kane the Undertaker before his big debut at Survivor Series on November 22nd. Walking out with Brother Love to that creepy music, he made an instant impact, destroying Coco Beware with his tombstone piledriver, then taking out Dusty Rhodes too. He dominated everyone in his path, scaring fans every time he showed up. Brother Love didn't last long as his manager. Instead, he reunited with Percy Pringle, who now played the creepy Paul Bearer. Bearer carried a mysterious urn that seemed to give The Undertaker his supernatural powers. The following spring brought Wrestlemania on March 24, 1991, where he would initiate what would become a legendary streak by defeating Superfly Jimmy Snuka with his devastating tombstone finisher. Next came a big feud with Ultimate Warrior, which ended early when Warrior left WWE. But nothing could slow the dead man down. Even though he was supposed to be a bad guy, fans were starting to cheer for him. They couldn't help but be impressed. In a huge moment at the 1991 Survivor Series, he shocked everyone by beating Hulk Hogan for the WWE Championship. Though he lost the title days later because Ric Flair interfered, just beating Hogan showed how much WWE believed in their new star. The next year got even better. At WrestleMania 8, he kept his perfect record going by beating Jake the Snake Roberts so badly that Jake left WWE for 4 years. This feud turned the dead man into a good guy for the first time, and fans loved it. But things weren't all perfect. For a while, WWE kept putting him against really big guys who couldn't really wrestle well. Since his character had to act almost robot-like and not show pain, these matches weren't very exciting. He fought people like Kamala and Giant Gonzalez, barely beating Gonzalez by disqualification at WrestleMania 9 in 1993. It wasn't his best time, but he kept winning anyway. Things got better when he started fighting Yokozuna, leading to an exciting casket match at the 1994 Royal Rumble. Though he lost, the match ended with him mysteriously floating up to the heavens, a clever way to give him time off to heal his bad back. This meant missing WrestleMania for the first time, and he didn't return until SummerSlam. When he came back, he had to deal with a weird storyline where Ted DiBiase hired a fake Undertaker, played by Mark's friend Brian Lee. Behind the scenes, things were getting interesting too. While The Clique, a group consisting of Shawn Michaels, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Triple H, and Sean Waltman had a lot of power backstage, The Undertaker formed his own group called the Bone Street Crew. This included wrestlers like Yokozuna, Savio Vega, Charles Wright, the Godwins, and Rikishi. By this point, The Undertaker was so respected that even The Clique didn't mess with him. He became the judge of Wrestler's Court, a way wrestlers would solve their problems backstage when someone broke the unwritten rules. Outside the ring, Mark was starting a family, marrying his first wife Jody Lynn and welcoming their son Gunnar. Meanwhile, his character was evolving from a spooky Undertaker into something more powerful, a gothic figure who could control lightning and manipulate the arena's lights with just a wave of his hands. This new version of the character helped him continue his success. At WrestleMania 11 in April 1995, he beat King Kong Bundy, adding another win to his streak. Shortly after, he had to wear a protective mask because of an injured eye socket, but kept wrestling through his ongoing feud with Ted DiBiase's group. By late '95, he moved back into main events, facing off against Diesel at WrestleMania 12, where he made it 5-0 at the Big Show. But the next night changed everything when Mankind debuted. Unlike anyone before him, Mankind actually got the upper hand against The Undertaker multiple times. Their rivalry led to a brutal boiler room brawl at SummerSlam 1996, where Mankind not only won the match but also convinced Paul Bearer to turn against The Undertaker. It was the first time the dead man seemed truly vulnerable. The rivalry reached new heights at In Your House, Buried Alive in October 1996, where they fought in the first ever Buried Alive match. Though he ended up buried that night, true to his character, the dead man wouldn't stay down. He returned at Survivor Series just weeks later, now looking more demonic than ever as the Lord of Darkness. After finally beating Mankind, he set his sights on bigger goals in early 1997. Following some controversy at that year's Royal Rumble, he earned a shot at the WWE Championship against Psycho Sid at WrestleMania 13. That night, he both won his second WWE title and extended his WrestleMania streak to 6-0. Then came what would become his most memorable storyline yet. Paul Bearer returned, wanting to manage the new champion. When The Undertaker refused, Bearer threatened to reveal a dark secret from his past if he didn't agree. This blackmail would lead to one of WWE's biggest stories ever. The champion reluctantly let Bearer back into his life, but eventually couldn't take the manipulation anymore and refused to work with him. That's when Bearer dropped the bombshell. The Undertaker had a brother named Kane, who was still alive and wanted revenge. It was classic WWE drama at its finest. For months, Bearer kept warning everyone that Kane was coming, revealing that The Undertaker had started a fire years ago that killed their parents and severely burned Kane. While this story played out in the background, the dead man kept defending his WWE title through spring and summer. The pressure finally got to him, though, and he lost the belt to Bret Hart at SummerSlam 1997. Things got even worse when he started a bitter feud with Shawn Michaels, leading to the first ever Hell in a Cell match at In Your House Bad Blood that October. The match would go down as one of WWE's greatest ever, showing everyone that Mark Calloway could really wrestle when given the chance. But just when it seemed The Undertaker would win, Kane finally appeared and cost his brother the victory. Kane's return haunted The Undertaker, as his brother and Paul Bearer kept demanding a match. But The Undertaker refused to fight his own flesh and blood, so Kane took out his anger on other wrestlers instead, destroying both Mankind and Vader. For a moment, it seemed like the brothers might actually reconcile. When DX was making The Undertaker's life miserable, Kane showed up to help him, and everyone thought the family drama was finally over. But it was all a trap. At the Royal Rumble during The Undertaker's casket match against Shawn Michaels, Kane turned on his brother. He not only cost him the match but trapped him in the casket and set it on fire. Of course, being The Undertaker, he somehow survived. After disappearing for a few weeks, he returned right before WrestleMania 14 with a message. He'd finally face his brother at WWE's biggest show. At WrestleMania, The Undertaker faced his toughest challenge yet in Kane, but still won after hitting 3 tombstone piledrivers, making his streak 7-0. Their feud wasn't over, though. Next month, they met in WWE's first-ever Inferno match, which The Undertaker also won. While Kane moved on to chase Steve Austin's WWE title, The Undertaker renewed his rivalry with Mankind. This led to one of wrestling's most shocking moments ever at King of the Ring. During their Hell in a Cell match, they started on top of the cage, and The Undertaker threw Mankind off, sending him crashing through an announce table 16 feet below. The chaos continued when he later choke-slammed Mankind through the cage itself. After that, he set his sights on champion Steve Austin. Things got interesting when they were forced to become tag team champions together while building to their title match. By SummerSlam on August 30th, any teamwork was gone as they fought for the belt. Leading up to the match, it seemed The Undertaker had finally made peace with Kane. Though Kane didn't get involved and Austin won the match, it soon became clear afterward that the brothers had truly reunited. By October, everything changed again. The Undertaker turned on Kane, reunited with Paul Bearer, and finally admitted he'd killed their parents. His character transformed into a dark priest who sat on an evil throne, leading a group called the Ministry of Darkness. This sinister crew included the Acolytes, the Brood, Midian, Viscera, and the Big Show. The Ministry storyline really heated up in 1999 when The Undertaker set his sights on Vince McMahon himself. In a story that mixed reality and fiction, he tried to take over WWE, while Vince accused him of losing himself in his character. The war got intense, with the dead man terrorizing the entire McMahon family. Things got even darker when he hanged the Big Boss Man at WrestleMania 15 during a Hell in a Cell match, which made his streak 8-0, though fans try to forget this one. Then he tried to force Stephanie McMahon into marriage during a creepy ceremony on Raw that April. He claimed a mysterious higher power was behind it all, pulling the Ministry's strings from the shadows. Stone Cold stopped the wedding, which led to another title match between them at Over the Edge. The Undertaker won his 3rd WWE Championship that night. 2 weeks later came the big reveal. Vince McMahon was the mysterious higher power all along. Even today, fans consider this one of WWE's worst plot twists ever. His title reign didn't last long, though. On June 28th's Raw, in what became WWE's highest-rated segment ever at that time, Stone Cold won the belt back. The Ministry fell apart after that, and The Undertaker started teaming with Big Show, taking the younger wrestler under his wing. They even won the tag team titles twice together. During this time, The Undertaker started looking less like a dark priest and more like his real-life self. Kevin Nash claimed this change happened because The Undertaker was planning to jump to WCW, though that seems unlikely given both WCW's struggles and The Undertaker's loyalty to WWE. Whatever the real reason, he took some time off in September 1999 to heal a groin injury and marry his second wife, Sarah. When he returned at Judgment Day in May 2000, fans saw a completely different Undertaker, the American Badass. The dead man was gone, replaced by a tough-talking biker who rode to the ring on a Harley-Davidson wearing denim and leather. Kid Rock's American Badass, later Limp Bizkit's Rollin', became his entrance music. Though it was a huge change, fans quickly embraced this new version of The Undertaker, breathing fresh life into a character that should have gotten stale years ago. This new style made him even more dominant. After a quick feud with Kane, they reunited as the Brothers of Destruction. On his own, freed from his old character's limitations, he was finally having great matches with stars like Kurt Angle, The Rock, and Triple H. His feud with Triple H led to what many consider his best WrestleMania match yet, making his streak 9-0 at WrestleMania 17, Surprisingly, it was around this time that someone backstage first noticed he'd never lost at WrestleMania. While the streak seems planned now, those first 9 wins were just luck. Before his next WrestleMania chance, he stayed busy. He and Kane won the tag team titles on the April 19th SmackDown and feuded with Steve Austin and Triple H's two-man power trip. Then came the WCW invasion, a storyline that would disappoint pretty much everyone. During the invasion, he had forgettable feuds with Diamond Dallas Page, who they made look weak, and Chronic, leading to one of wrestling's worst tag matches. The bright spot was winning the WCW tag team titles with Kane and helping WWE win at Survivor Series that November. Outside the ring, he and his wife Sarah welcomed 2 daughters, Chasey and Gracie. Meanwhile, after the invasion ended, he surprised everyone by turning bad guy again. Now calling himself Big Evil, he basically played up being the toughest guy in WWE and dared anyone to test him. At the 2002 Royal Rumble, Rookie Maven shocked everyone by eliminating him. Instead of burying the newcomer, The Undertaker used this to help make Maven look good, showing why he was so respected backstage. His kindness to younger talent paid off when he got a dream match against Ric Flair at WrestleMania 18, where he made his streak 10 EO. The first WWE draft sent him to Raw, where he quickly beat Hulk Hogan for the Undisputed Championship. As champion, he defended the belt on both shows and helped build up younger stars, like Jeff Hardy. His reign ended at Vengeance in July when The Rock won a triple threat match that also included Kurt Angle. After losing the title, he moved to SmackDown and helped make Brock Lesnar look strong, putting on a great hell. In a cell match at No Mercy that October, where they never had to leave the cage. He took a break after that, returning in early 2003 to mentor newcomer Nathan Jones for what was planned as a WrestleMania 19 tag match against Big Show and A-Train. The plans changed when it became clear Jones wasn't ready for TV. Instead, The Undertaker fought alone at WrestleMania, beating both opponents to make his streak 11-0. But fans were getting restless. They wanted the dead man back instead of this biker character. He spent the rest of 2003 having solid matches with John Cena, Kurt Angle, and Brock Lesnar before losing to Vince McMahon in a Buried Alive match at Survivor Series that November. The loss gave him time to rethink his character and mourn his father's passing. When he returned at WrestleMania 20 in March 2004, fans got what they wanted. The dead man was back, but with a twist. This version kept some of his biker attitude, letting him keep putting on great matches. With Paul Bearer back by his side, he beat Kane for the second time at WrestleMania, making it 12-0. After WrestleMania, he kept Paul Bearer around while feuding with the Dudley Boys, JBL, and Randy Orton. The Orton rivalry would lead to WrestleMania 21, where the streak really became a major storyline. With Orton's legend killer character and rising star status, many fans actually thought he might end the streak. This match created the formula for future WrestleMania matches, intense near falls that kept fans guessing until the end. The Undertaker won again, making it 13-0. His matches were getting better too, thanks to his growing interest in MMA. He started using moves like the Gogoplata, adding a new layer of realism to his fights. 2005 saw him in a controversial feud with Muhammad Hassan that had to be cut short when a terrorist-themed segment aired on the same day as the London bombings. He went back to feuding with Orton after that, actually losing to him at both SummerSlam and No Mercy that fall. After disappearing for a month, he returned at Survivor Series wanting one more match with Orton, this time inside Hell in a cell. Leading up to this match, the supernatural side of his character came back strong. He started doing creepy things like possessing backstage interviewers to send messages to Orton. The mind games worked. He beat Orton at Hell in a Cell that December, ending their rivalry for good. Looking for new challenges, he faced Kurt Angle in early 2006. In a rare showing of respect, he actually tapped out to Angle's ankle lock. WrestleMania 22 was supposed to feature another match with Angle, who was planned to end the streak. Plans changed though, and while Angle went after the World Heavyweight title, The Undertaker faced Mark Henry in a quick casket match instead, making it 14-0. Then came a rough patch, trying to get good matches out of the Great Khali. Even The Undertaker couldn't make that work. Despite having proven himself as a great wrestler, he had to power through these lackluster matches at Judgment Day and on SmackDown that August. Things improved when he started feuding with Mr. Kennedy. Their program ran through the rest of the year, featuring First Blood and ambulance matches. He even brought Kane back to team up against Kennedy and MVP. By 2007, he set his sights on his first Royal Rumble win. Entering at number 30, he found himself face-to-face with Shawn Michaels in the final two, their first encounter since the late 90s. After several close calls, he finally eliminated HBK to earn a shot at Batista's World Heavyweight title at WrestleMania 23. The WrestleMania match delivered. After 16 intense minutes, he both kept his streak alive at 15-0 and won the World Heavyweight Championship. This started a golden period. For the next 6 years, his WrestleMania matches would consistently steal the show and build the streak's legend. His title reign lasted until May 11th, when Edge cashed in Money in the Bank and took the belt. The loss allowed him to heal a bicep injury, keeping him off TV until September. He returned to face Mark Henry briefly, before jumping back into the title picture with Edge and Batista, fighting in both a Hell in a Cell match at Survivor Series and a triple threat at Armageddon, though he couldn't recapture the gold. Looking for another title shot, he entered the 2008 Royal Rumble, starting at number 1 against Shawn Michaels at number 2. This time, HBK got revenge, eliminating him. The Undertaker bounced back next month, winning an Elimination Chamber match against Batista, Finlay, Great Khali, MVP, and Big Daddy V to earn a WrestleMania match against Edge. At WrestleMania 24, he put on another classic, making Edge tap out after 24 minutes to win the World Heavyweight title and push his streak to 16-0. He defended against Edge at Backlash, but Vicky Guerrero's interference got the title vacated. Their feud continued through summer, ending at SummerSlam in Hell in a Cell when he chokeslammed Edge from a ladder through the ring. He moved on to feuds with Big Show and Jeff Hardy until Shawn Michaels made a challenge. HBK believed he could end the streak. Their WrestleMania 25 match was billed as Heaven vs. Hell. Michaels, the born-again Christian in white descending from above, against the demonic Undertaker rising from below. What followed is considered by many the greatest match ever. After 30 intense minutes, the Dead Man made it 17-0. He took 4 months off after this career peak, returning to chase CM Punk's World Heavyweight title. He won it inside Hell in a Cell that October, holding it until the next February's Elimination Chamber. That night started badly when Pyro accidentally burned his chest and face. It ended worse when Shawn Michaels interfered, helping Chris Jericho take his title. HBK was obsessed with getting another shot after his loss. After failing to win the Royal Rumble, he cost Undertaker the title to force a rematch. The Undertaker agreed, but with one condition: if Michaels lost at WrestleMania 26, he had to retire. Their streak versus career match headlined WrestleMania. Some fans thought it even topped their first match, but either way, after 24 minutes, HBK's career ended as the streak reached 18-0. The Undertaker took time off to heal his aging body, returning to feud with Kane over the World Heavyweight title. Knowing his career was winding down, he put Kane over strong, losing 3 straight pay-per-view matches before taking more time off for rotator cuff surgery. He made it back for WrestleMania 27, where Triple H challenged him to avenge Shawn Michaels. Though he won to make it 19-0, the match told a new story. The Dead Man barely survived, needing help to leave while Triple H walked out on his own. This led to their WrestleMania 28 rematch, dubbed the End of an Era. After not wrestling for a full year, The Undertaker would face Triple H in Hell in a Cell, with HBK as referee. The story was clear. Keeping the streak alive was getting harder with age. For over 30 minutes, they told an incredible story. Everyone believed the streak might end when Undertaker barely kicked out of a Sweet Chin Music pedigree combo, but he survived to make it 20-0. The match was so perfect that Mick Foley begged him to retire right there, saying he'd never top it. He didn't listen. Though he had another good match beating CM Punk at WrestleMania 29 to reach 21-0, age was clearly catching up to him. After mostly staying away from the ring for a year, he returned at WrestleMania 30 to face Brock Lesnar. Nobody thought Lesnar would win. Surely the streak would end with a young star getting the spotlight. That's why the arena fell silent when Brock hit his third F5 and got the pin. After 24 years, the streak was over. Like wrestling's Red Wedding, it proved the dead man was mortal after all. Brock used the win to become WWE's final boss, a role he still holds today. But The Undertaker wasn't done. He returned at WrestleMania 31 to beat Bray Wyatt, then had a surprisingly good Hell in a Cell match with Lesnar that summer. By WrestleMania 32, though, when he fought Shane McMahon in a disappointing match, it was clear his best days were behind him. Everyone could see he needed to retire, but out of respect, nobody would tell him. By then, Mark Calaway knew he'd missed his perfect exit and became obsessed with finding one last great match. His body wasn't cooperating, though. At WrestleMania 33, his match with Roman Reigns was rough to watch. His bad hips made it clear he shouldn't have been wrestling. The next year's match with John Cena only went 3 minutes because of his limitations. He tried getting back in shape for matches in Saudi Arabia, but these turned out even worse, especially his bout with Goldberg in a tag match with Kane against DX. He had a decent showing teaming with Roman Reigns against Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre at Extreme Rules 2019, but it still wasn't the send-off he wanted. Finally, at WrestleMania 36, he got his perfect ending against AJ Styles. The pandemic forced them to get creative with the Boneyard match, which cleverly worked around his physical limits while celebrating all his characters: the Dead Man, American Badass, and Mark Calaway himself. After winning and making his WrestleMania record 25-2, he seemed ready to retire. Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold, Steve Austin, John Cena, Roman Reigns. The faces of WWE changed, but they all had to step into the dead man's domain. Each generation's top star learned the same hard truth. They might have ruled WWE for a time, but they were always walking in the Undertaker's yard. And that yard, sacred ground built on 4 decades of darkness, respect, and legend, will forever belong to him and him alone.